Now on Katu News at 11, a fast-moving brush fire too close to home, sparking lane closures on I-84 and the evacuation of a motel in Troutdale. We're seeing brand new video tonight showing the chaotic moments as it started to spread. Good evening. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm Steve Dunn.
And I'm Deborah Knapp. The fire broke out just before 7 near the 238th on-ramp to I-84. From there, the wind drove it west toward the Troutdale exit and the Motel 6 in the area, which had to be evacuated. Firefighters say it jumped a train that wasn't moving and kept burning on the side of the tracks. They also say it burned an area they wouldn't expect. It was well watered, full of green trees, not fire behavior they typically see in our area.
It takes so little to start a fire in these conditions. It can be that flipped cigarette that people have flipped in cigarettes for their entire life of smoking, but this is the one that did it this time. So if that was the cause, it just can be the simplest things that can get these things going.
Portland, Gresham, and Corbett Fire all responded to help put out the flames. No one was hurt. No property was damaged. Crews say they'll continue to mop up into the night.
So many words, she says her hands are tied. Here's the controversy. You have the Supreme Court of the United States saying these non-unanimous jury verdicts are unconstitutional. It's a decision that's now known as the Ramos ruling. You now have hundreds of prisoners in Oregon who have little to no way to appeal.
Jury trials in Oregon for over 80 years stood nearly in a league of their own. A constitutional amendment approved by Oregon voters in the 1930s made non-unanimous jury convictions acceptable by law. Terrence Hayes is one of hundreds impacted by that law decades later. He says a jury voted 10-2 to convict him of attempted murder in 2004. Not 12 jurors agreeing on the crime, just 10.
In 48 other states, you would have either been retried or had the charges dropped.
Right.
Here in Oregon, you went to prison for 13 years.
Right. But I did every day of my 13 years, right? There was no leniency, there was nothing. I just brought my time unconstitutionally the whole way.
TJ Jackson is another. He says a non-unanimous jury convicted him on charges related to an armed robbery in 2000. He served 21 years. Oregon Governor Kate Brown commuted his sentence in January of this year.
I would have probably never been in this position legally if I just got my due process.
Oregon and Louisiana were the only states that allowed non-unanimous jury convictions until last year. The U.S. Supreme Court overruled them in a landmark decision called the Ramos ruling in April of 2020. That case involved a Louisiana man convicted by a non-unanimous jury. Eliza Kaplan is a lawyer and law professor at Lewis and Clark Law School. She's fought against non-unanimous juries for the last 5 years. After the Supreme Court ruling, she started tracking down people convicted this way in Oregon, and she found them, 600 people statewide.
These people break down into two groups. First, you have about 430 people who have not exhausted all the appeals afforded to them by law. Those cases automatically go back to the local district attorney to either have charges dropped or to have the case retried. This other group is not impacted by the Ramos ruling. You have about 220 people who have exhausted their appeals. That means their cases are closed. It's these people, Kaplan and others say, deserve a new trial as well.
Those 200 plus people have a known non-unanimous jury, and all they want is for the Ramos opinion that says non-unanimous juries are unconstitutional. All they want is for that to apply to them, and that their case would be vacated and they would go back to the county where they were convicted, and the district attorney would review the case and make a determination of whether they want to retry them.
Kaplan and others say Attorney General Ellen Rosenblum has not done enough in their petitions for new trials. Rosenblum has criticized non-unanimous juries on numerous occasions. However, Kaplan says actions have not followed the words.
We all agree something's unconstitutional. We all agree of its historical racist origins. And it shouldn't be so hard.
Katu tried to speak with Rosenblum about the criticism. I reached out to her office 5 times beginning in mid-June. She turned down an interview last week through a spokesperson. Rosenblum's office argued in favor of non-unanimous convictions in a brief filed before the Supreme Court ruled. Her office later argued against applying the Ramos ruling retroactively, affecting those 220 people who exhausted their appeals. Despite this, Rosenblum says, quote, I have always supported changing our law to require unanimous jury verdicts. Before Ramos, I tried to get the legislature to send a referral to voters to get our law changed. The legislature declined to do that, deferring instead to the courts. She went on to say the legislature has more flexibility than the courts, and we are urging action as soon as possible. The Attorney General says she can't apply the Ramos ruling without state lawmakers because, quote, our current state law follows federal law, meaning it does not allow for retroactive application of Ramos. Hayes and others say they will keep fighting.
You're basically saying we recognize we wronged you, but for the rest of your life, you're going to have to eat from that.
Why is it so important for you to have your record cleared at this point?
Well, listen, it's important because I still have to check a box, right? Every time I go for a job, I have to check a box. When I go for a home, I have to check a box. I've been found unconstitutionally guilty of a violent crime. People don't want you in their homes. They don't want you in their neighborhoods.
A consequence Hayes says he doesn't deserve.
The AG's spokesperson says she actually has a meeting this week with state lawmakers about a state fix for the issue of retroactivity. She wants lawmakers to create clear rules for how the state can review these cases and grant new trials if necessary.
The city says the number of large encampments has increased sixfold compared to pre-pandemic numbers. And Portlanders know you don't have to travel far to find a homeless encampment in the area. There are small and large campsites. This site here, right off Northwest 23rd, has been home to at least one tent for months. I saw it cleared once, but that obviously didn't last long.
For the past year, TJ Browning and others in Laurelhurst have been trying to get the city's attention.
Taking pictures of all the propane tanks, all the open fires.
Asking them to do something about the large encampment that's grown significantly during the pandemic. And then, all of a sudden, this past week, they started hearing back.
We were thinking there's been a shift in attitude or something is changing.
On Wednesday morning, the city issued a big change, greatly expanding the number of encampment removals allowed. At the start of the pandemic, the city stopped all sweeps.
But what we have now is a lot of large camps forming. I do think it's appropriate for us to go in and mitigate those camps.
In July, when we did this interview with Mayor Ted Wheeler, the city resumed camp cleanups on a limited basis. The city could only remove certain encampments, like those with 8 or more occupied structures, or those where physical distancing wasn't happening. The city said then the camps increased chances of COVID spreading in the community. Now, the city says the current protocols are ineffective, and it's not seeing an improvement in public health and safety risks. The new rules allow more removals, including of encampments with biohazard issues or ADA accessibility problems like sidewalks being blocked. This comes as many activists have spent months fighting against homeless sweeps. It's no doubt a controversial move, and while Laurelhurst residents have started to hear back from the city, we've heard nearly nothing. I spent hours through email and on the phone trying to get city commissioners, the mayor's office, the Joint Office of Homeless Services, or the Office of Management and Finance to interview, but was sent in circles. No one was willing or able to talk about this change City Council unanimously agreed upon.
Now, City Council and the mayor did release a joint statement this morning saying in part, quote, these new protocols reprioritize public health and safety among houseless Portlanders and aim to improve sanitary conditions. Now, we know that city commissioners had meetings today, but we asked for simply just 5 minutes and still got nothing.